Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. After taking a little break to answer your questions in a couple of Ask Me Anything episodes, I'm back this week with another conversation, and this one is with an amazing woman. Today, it's with Dr. Robyn Benson, and I'll talk about her in just a minute. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. This is where I feature conversations with women who have inspirational stories to share. These are women who are on the cutting edge. They are kicking butt in major ways and forging their own paths to success. Now, they come from a wide range of backgrounds and find themselves in an equally wide range of stages in their lives. Now, the one thread that they have in common is that they are bold in what they do. They follow what they love, and somehow they've managed to create a lifestyle that supports it. It's when we hear stories about other people's success and triumph over obstacles that we become inspired, and really, it makes us feel like anything is possible. I really believe that we all have the ability to become better versions of ourselves. And what I'm hoping is that you'll find pearls of wisdom in these conversations, just little bits of information that inspire and motivate you. And I'm hoping you'll hear something that makes you want to change and make choices in your life that ultimately makes you happier and more fulfilled. And, this is a great episode that is going to inspire you in so many ways. Now, before I give you a little background into Robyn, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge and talk about the two very high-profile suicides that were in the news last week. And that's, of course, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. And I have to first admit that the only thing I really knew about Kate Spade was what I learned from an interview I heard that featured Kate and her husband, Andy. And it was on a podcast called How I Built This. And what I'm saying is I knew very little about her other than how she and really they built their business. So I don't have a closet filled with Kate Spade bags, in other words. Because of his work in the travel world, I knew more about Anthony Bourdain than I did Kate. And even that was pretty limited because honestly, I wasn't a big fan of his. And I know millions of people loved him for his irreverent behavior and just the knowledge and the information that he brought to people. But the little that I've seen of his shows, I felt like he was sometimes disrespectful of other cultures, and really that turned me off. Now, I know many friends who sought out his recommendations, and they've told me that they've broadened their own culinary world and really probably their travel world as well because of him. But I just don't know. I guess I'm not saying that I wished him ill will at all. I actually heard a wonderful interview with him on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, and I listened to him as he described his struggles and his addictions, and I really empathized with him. I really think that he was a good person. I think that he had a rough life, but his style just wasn't something that I was attracted to. And I guess I feel the need to explain myself because I made a snarky comment about him during my conversation with Samantha Brown. And if you want to go back, if you missed that episode, that was episode number 36. So I just want to be clear that even just what I said, his death really did affect me a lot. And I've been asking myself why that was since the news broke last Friday about that. And I just realized there is no doubt he had a huge influence on the travel world. And for that, I know he will really be missed. But my grief over his death extends beyond what we've lost in the years to come because he's not here just to deliver his wit and his insight. What I realized was that my sadness is over the fact that these two suicides, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, will no doubt open the door to others who think that this is an acceptable way to bow out of the world. And you're probably aware there was a New York Times article that was released. It was actually just a couple of days after Kate Spade's suicide, and it was a day before Anthony Bourdain's. And it talked about how the suicide rate has increased in the U.S. by 25% between 1999 and 2016. Now, I don't know if there are stats that have been released later than 2016, and specifically I'm talking about the election and just the aftermath of that. But I can tell you that anecdotally, there have been people in my world who've shared with me their deep depression that is coming from the current political climate. And I really worry for these people. I genuinely do. And I just can't imagine how many more people are out there that feel the same way, other than those who've shared this with me. And I just fear for those who aren't seeking help or who aren't able to seek help. They don't have the resources or the information to do that. And really, I just think we're in for continued sad times and news like we've just heard coming up. Now, I've talked about this a number of times on the podcast and on social media, and I'll say that I simply have to tune the news out. It's really too much of a bummer for me to keep up with, and it's doing me, and I really think it's doing our society more harm than good to stay so on top of things. You really have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others and be a productive member of society. And I know people that probably judge me for this, but I truly feel that I am a better person, which means I can be a better person and more available to others if I remove myself from this circus. I just have to focus on positive things. And I really urge others to do the same. I know we have to fight for what's right. And there are a lot of things that are wrong right now, and we've got to really fight to turn things around. But at the end of the day, if we're too depressed, if we're too upset or too angry to even function, then we're not being of use to anyone. We're not helping ourselves. We're not helping our families or our communities. And that's really where we need to be right now. That's the spot that we have to be in. Okay, that is my soapbox for today. On to today's episode. I am really excited to bring you another episode with Dr. Robyn Benson. If you haven't already listened to my first conversation with her back in September, definitely go back and listen to that. It will give you quite a bit of background on Robyn and her practice. In short, Robyn is a doctor of Oriental Medicine. Now, she not only brings with her a background of knowledge that's steeped in ancient wisdom and practice, but she is also one of the more forward-thinking practitioners in the country. Her practice is called Santa Fe Soul Center for Optimal Health, and she specializes in youthful aging. And she provides cutting-edge health technologies that focus on regenerative medicine. She also focuses on women's health, preventative medicine, and she's got this great program also that helps people who are recovering from addiction. Now, her facility is pretty high tech, and it is really interesting to go there. I just love it. And I've had a number of treatments with her, including a couple of prolozone shots in my foot. And this is to help with a bit of healing from a running injury. And we'll talk about that in the podcast, and I'll report back and let you know how things go with that. Anyway, Robyn and I had a delightful follow-up chat after we spoke last year, and we talked about some of the new treatment that she's doing and the types of patients she's working with. But we also talked about some other really cutting-edge practices that are going on in the country, including stem cell treatments. And these are all now just becoming available as part of not only her work, but just the regenerative medicine work in general within the country. And it's really, really cool to hear about. I will say that I do see the irony of me talking with Robyn about how people can live longer and healthier with all of these cutting edge technologies, as well as with the information that's available today. And then kind of that juxtaposition about these high profile suicides that have taken immensely talented people from us way too early. There's so much emotional distress that's an undercurrent in our culture now. But the good news is that if your body feels better, your mind is going to follow suit. And there are countless small ways that we can improve how we feel, which is ultimately going to improve our mind. So just think about that, listen to this episode, and just consider some of the things that we talk about. With that little bit of intro and the food for thought, so to speak, enjoy this conversation with Dr. Robyn Benson. So the first thing that I want to ask you about is when we spoke last time, and for listeners, it was episode 11 when we last chatted. And that was about a year ago today, because I come down every year at this time for the Santa Fe Culinary Tour. So thank you for having me back here to Santa Fe Soul.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. But when we spoke, you had mentioned that you get up in the morning and you have a little bit of dark chocolate. Are you still doing that?
I am still doing that.
I love that.
It's so funny.
I love it more because, as you know, I had some tests run with Chris Talley. And again, that's another episode that I spoke to folks. Listeners will know about this. But he had actually recommended to me 1 to 2 ounces of dark chocolate a day. And he said it would help me as I sleep. It would help rid myself of toxins overnight. So I thought, Dr. Benson's onto something there.
It's got a lot of good source of magnesium in it. That's a good thing. It's one of the better sources, and a lot of antioxidants.
Yeah.
Dark chocolate. So 85% on up is what I recommend.
Okay.
And even I don't like 100%. Oh my God, I can't do those nibs.
Like the baking,
cocoa
right?
nibs.
The
No, forget it.
I put the cocoa nibs in my smoothies, and I'll just do a little
That's
dump
a good
of
way
that.
to get some goodness of life.
Yeah. So yeah, you are onto something with your chocolate in the morning. And like you said earlier in that previous episode, it doesn't take a lot, because with that dark chocolate, it's enough. It's got enough of a bite that you're not craving an entire bar of it. So
Never. And also in the middle of the day too, like this morning, I definitely at like 6 o'clock in the morning, had my decaf Swiss water processed coffee and a little bit of chocolate. And then around 11 o'clock, I just felt like a little boost.
Are you still working out, doing your kettlebells and that sort of thing in the morning?
Okay. Yes. And my main thing though is a high intensity interval training where I just run for 10 minutes, 3 times or 4 times a week. That's all I do right now. And I stay pretty darn fit.
I know. The thing that amazes me most about that is that you're able to get up in the morning and work out and not have a full meal, because I feel like, at least I've told myself, or it is true, that I need something to eat in the morning before I work out. Yeah. That's how it works for me.
Sometimes I have a smoothie or maybe a quarter of a banana. But typically that's all I need. But something, that's all I really need.
That's great. Yeah.
And they're not, it's not like running an hour or anything more endurance wise. When I used to train for marathons,
you would need something more substantial.
I would like something more. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, gals, go put that dark chocolate on your, on your list for first thing in the morning, at least. So I want to talk about anything that's new. Let's start out with anything new that's going on with you. You have a podcast coming out. You said you'll launch it next month.
It's going to be in July. Yes. It's called Younger by Dr. Robyn Benson, where I interview amazing, when I say amazing, but health experts in the field of endocrinology. So what does it mean if your thyroid's not working, and how does that impact the way you're aging? I have to say immensely. If your thyroid's not working, it affects every single cell in your body. And then I'm also interviewing people around gut health, how important that is, the integrity of a healthy gut, which a lot of us are suffering with malabsorption issues and leaky gut. Then also looking at, I interviewed a woman who's going to talk about emotional eating and just a lifetime of eating foods due to emotional and mood swings. That's a huge thing. And I feel like as we're speaking, that a lot of women are going to relate to a chapter or time in their lives where they felt that was them.
Yeah.
I certainly went through a major stage of emotional eating.
Well, I think at any level, that's what we do. Even if it doesn't mean you have to be 10 or 50 or 75 pounds overweight. We all do it to some extent.
Right.
We reach for something, we get stressed out, and we go reach for a bag of chips or bag of Oreos or whatever it is, and just feed ourselves.
So this podcast, also the goal is to really educate the population on what's out there. Like there is so much in regenerative medicine, how to turn back the clock naturally.
Before we go any further with that, just define that for people who may not have heard that term before, because that's really what you're all about. So define that.
So regenerative medicine is one of the fastest areas of medicine, and growing areas of medicine right now, because people are really interested in turning back the clock, healing joints, sexual rejuvenation naturally, like looking to nature to restore a healthy body, mind, spirit, and getting down to every single cell in our body. So when a lot of people think of regenerative medicine, they immediately think of, it's stem cell therapies. And I said, well, that is a huge emerging area of regenerative medicine. But also it's as basic as having a plant-based diet. It's earthing. It's walking outside barefoot. It's your thoughts. It's bringing nature into every single moment. When we're thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future, we're not accessing the power of the moment. That's much more regenerative. Our thoughts can be very healthy or they can be very acidic. And, our primal brains are kind of designed for that fear, right? That fight or flight and the beta waves that we run so much. And running so much of that, it causes our body to actually wear down. Negative thoughts are acidic in nature, right? So regenerative medicine is looking at all of those factors that are either breaking our body down or are regenerating healthy, new joints, tissues, thoughts, all that.
And you're coming at it not from just one magic bullet, but just from a really holistic.
Exactly. And at Santa Fe Soul Center for Optimal Health, we offer high-end regenerative therapies, which basically are platelet-rich plasma injections, which many people know in the world of athletes and racehorses, right? Anybody from Tiger Woods to some of the top racehorses in the world, they're looking at their own nature from their own blood that's actually re-injected into a joint to help it heal. So that's more high-end. Or if you can go to stem cell clinics around the world where you can be spending anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. There are places in Panama where people spend $50,000 and they go there for 2 weeks to get maybe 3 IV infusions
of stem cells.
Right. So that's the more high end of regenerative medicine. And then there's also centers where people need to regenerate colon tissue. So there's transplants that are being done. It's very common now where some of these stem cells are not autologous coming from your own body. You're looking at tissue from a cord, like an umbilical cord from a baby, or amniotic fluid from a placenta. So there are more of these labs that are coming alive in various cities all around the country.
I know we have one in Seattle. I've got a friend who wants to go for his knee.
Yes, and there's several in Utah as well. But there's a lot that goes into testing. So before someone wants to go that direction, you want to work with the practitioners who's working with a reputable lab where you know they're doing hundreds of tests on every single umbilical cord or the placenta tissue. That's usually, just so for everyone listening, that it's usually, within 10 to 15 minutes of a birth, that's when they pick up the delivery and take it right to the lab and it's tested right away to make sure that it's viable, healthy tissue.
Is there backlash when you talk about getting the stem cells from the umbilical cord? Is that part of the initial, the backlash that at least was happening maybe 5-10 years ago about using, I guess that's different than embryonic stem cell. That was the big hullabaloo that people were against using stem cells. Is that right? It's completely different.
Well, there's the embryonic, there's the cord tissue. All of that is obviously from another source. And then I have to say the whole world of stem cells is there's a lot of legal concerns. But the thing is, it's natural tissue, right? Like I think the one that you're talking about in Seattle, they're using autologous. So how can you argue against
autologous meaning it's from your own body?
It's from your own body. Right. So there's pros and cons for both. Let's say if somebody is 80 years old and they have some serious hip pain and not necessarily needing a hip replacement, do you want to use your own stem cells if you're 80 years old, or do you want to get stem cells from a infant, right?
Yeah.
That's alive and well. And they're often called progenitor cells. So basically when you put in cells from embryonic tissue, let's say, or from a cord, that it is so vital. It's so alive. And when you put that in a 80-year-old person's body, it's really helping that person's body produce its own stem cells.
And it's doing no harm to anything.
Right.
Okay.
So I just want to say progenitor cells. That's a kind of a more accurate look at what's going into somebody's body.
And you're not doing anything like that here, are you? You're just knowledgeable about that as part of it.
I just want to know, I know a lot about, just to be very helpful for anybody who calls about our regenerative therapies. No, primarily what we do here are breast lifts, facelifts, the O shot, the P shot, and PRP regenerative therapies for joints, and prolozone. Those are the 6 main things that we do here. But I like my patients to be aware of everything that's possible.
When you say facelifts, you're not doing literally surgical procedures.
No.
Okay. I wanted to be clear about that before someone thinks like, oh, she's a plastic surgeon here. No.
So people can get PRP facials, platelet-rich plasma facials, or they get the facelift. And when they get the facelift, that's where I actually inject their own platelet-rich plasma from their own blood into areas of the body. So if they have the Kurz lines here, I will inject
Like
into
me.
those. Or we have them these right here.
Yeah.
So, right. The worry
between your
lines.
eyes,
Exactly. Around the mouth and this whole area, the marionette. What do you call it? The
Marionette.
Marionette lines. Exactly. So I sculpt. That's what I love to do. I like literally work with the Leonardo's, like some of his face maps. I just love to create and craft and sculpt the most beautiful possible face.
Well, I was going to talk to you about my ankle today, but maybe I'll talk to you about my face.
We'll talk to you about your face and your ankle.
Okay, good. You know what? That'll be a good little segue. Let's talk about my ankle for just a minute. I have this thing, my left ankle on the inside is swelling a little bit from running. And I'm in denial about it because I have got a race coming up at the end of July. And I was re-listening to our episode when we spoke last year, and you had mentioned prolozone. Mm-hmm. Now, I am self-diagnosed that I've got a posterior tibial tendonitis, which is the issue. And so I was thinking when I re-listened to this episode, I thought, oh, prolozone, I wonder if that would help. And you said.
Absolutely. In fact, after we do this interview, I'd be happy to give you your first prolozone ever, right? This will be your first one?
Yeah, this would be my first one. So the prolozone for listeners is part of one of the packages that you offer, one of the things that you offer here. And what exactly does that do?
So prolozone, prolo means proliferate, like to grow healthy tissue. So in terms of, and ozone obviously is ozone. So what I do is I help restore healthy ligaments and healthy connective tissue in the body, ligaments and tendons in particular. So let's say in your example with your ankle, what I would do, prolozone is actually an injection of procaine and other minerals. We add B12, we add a little bit of ocean water, and dextrose, the sugar part of it, is really important. So I inject a solution first into that area, pretty much where the pain is, where the inflammation is, where the scar tissue is, where the origin of the injury. Mm-hmm. And then I inject that proliferative agent first, followed by ozone gas. And typically only 5 cc's to 10 cc's per injection site. And it takes less than 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. You know, it's really diagnosing and kind of doing some of my testing to find out where is the origin of the issue. Because sometimes people have a knee pain, but the knee is not the real issue. It's a hip problem, or it's an SI joint problem. But with an ankle issue that's local and there's some inflammation, then it's typically ankle related. So you have to know that. This is totally complementary medicine. We look at the whole body. Right. And it's actually not very uncomfortable at all. 30 seconds, I call it like the Jane Fonda burn. You might feel a little inflammation for a while, but then it doesn't
do any harm.
No.
There's no downside to it.
What we do know under ultrasound is that it immediately does the repair. Like you can actually see where there's inflamed tissue, or you see that there's a little bit of a micro tear, that you can see that it immediately kind of goes back to nature. So again, regenerative medicine, how we can bring tissue back to its original nature, even in an ankle or knee where you've had multiple injuries. The key thing for someone like you, because we're the same age, we're both 52, right? So treating it now rather than waiting 5 years, where just that wear and tear will continue, and very often an injured area and scar tissue that builds up. If we don't get it back to its original nature, then we get bone spurs, or the body will try to compensate in some form or fashion. And then you have more erosion and more arthritic changes that happen. So the sooner we repair a ligament or a tendon, the better. Better the longevity of your body and your joint and your happiness.
And everything. And that is so key. I talk to so many people who just happen to mention to me, or I know that they have a long-term, or they've been ill with something for a long time, and they won't go to get it fixed because they're either afraid, or they're afraid of what the answer will be, what the diagnosis will be, or they don't make the time to do it because they're too busy, and then it just gets worse. Because we have an audience here, how do we encourage people to get things taken care of, like Johnny on the spot, like immediately when there's an issue? What do you say to someone?
Well, I just always tell people, just get it, take care of it as soon as possible, because you wait another month. It could mean that that's like you are not enjoying life. Let me tell you, when you have chronic neck pain or you have elbow pain, it affects your life. It affects how you lift things. It affects your exercise. It affects your moods when you have pain in your body. And the longer you put it off, the worse it can get often. And sometimes it's just adjusting a hip. Sometimes it's doing acupuncture and doing a prolozone. That is just like, oh my God, like, why did I wait 4 months in one session?
Right.
So prolozone very often, I can't tell you how many knees I've treated where people have like waited a year and they one session, they're like in tears, like they can't believe it. Example, a woman drove from Albuquerque. She saw me on a TV segment where I was talking about prolozone and PRP for joints. And she literally would cry herself to sleep every night. Granted, this woman is a little bit overweight and I had, other lifestyle suggestions to make for her. I did one on both knees and her husband came in. She brought in her mother-in-law. Yet this was just yesterday. Like, she just cannot believe it. I mean, she doesn't have to use a cane, one prolozone.
No kidding.
But in many cases, though, it's the accumulation of treatments. That's where the shift really happens. But the knees with prolozone tend to be like, it's amazing. Prolozone is most effective in knees than any other joint.
If someone went into a conventional doctor, because you're a doctor of Oriental Medicine,
Right.
if someone went into a conventional doctor, would that doctor recommend something like a prolozone, or they would just give them a...
Most likely not if they don't have any knowledge, but I'm pretty well connected in Santa Fe, so quite a few medical doctors that focus mostly on sports injuries will know that this is very effective. And chiropractors and rolfers, people like that, they're like, my work is really helping, but I feel like if I adjust you and you get prolozone, the likelihood of that stabilizing is much greater. Because a lot of people get these great treatments and they last for like 2 or 3 days and then they're back to square one because we're not addressing the root cause. And then there's lots of great supplements out there too that are really important, from looking at different types of plant medicine and looking at Chinese medicine. Coridalis is a really great, actually, it's an American herb that's very, very good for pain and inflammation. Curcumin, many people know about the power of that. And then, once you reach 50, there's inflammation going on somewhere, no matter what. So I recommend that most people take 500 milligrams of curcumin every day. Same thing with fish oils. The right kind of fish oils are also anti-inflammatory and good for your brain and good for your hormones and good for your sex organs.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned earlier the gut health. And my husband just sent me an article this morning, just as I was getting on my flight here, for Triphala, because
I love Triphala.
Yeah. I was introduced to it when I was in India by my guide. And she said, oh yeah, I drink it every morning. And so then I started taking it more recently as a hormonal thing. And we could talk about that as well. My hormones going crazy, but it just really seems to help. And this article was about the gut bacteria, how it stabilizes or it's healthier, that they're finding that fruit flies live twice as long or something when they've been given this Triphala. So it's amazing when you talk about the supplements and how something pretty minor can be relatively inexpensive, can really go a long way. And
Triphala is awesome. It's one of the better choices out there for constipation, but it's way more than that. So it's good for the gut ecology, but it helps increase peristalsis. Peristalsis is how we digest foods through our stomach into our intestines and how we eliminate. And it is something that I just have people take 2 at night, especially when you travel. You travel a ton as well. It just helps to keep that going. But what's really important with Triphala, as with any other types of purgatives that we call them in Chinese medicine, is that you drink a lot of water. Yeah.
So, along with it?
Not so much before you go to bed, but you want to be drinking adequate amounts of water throughout the day, and or a high water based diet. So celery is like 47% water, carrots and green leafy vegetables. So what Mother Nature provides is a regenerative medicine. I'm a big advocate. I just did a podcast and a webinar for women on the 7 most important regenerative lifestyle choices that you can make every single day.
Can you go through those quickly?
Can I go through those? Yes. Well, earthing is one. Really, really important.
And by earthing, you mean
getting
taking
outdoors.
off your shoes.
Yeah. Getting outdoors is really important. Hydration. We've just talked about that. Food is medicine. Exercise as medicine. I'm big on having a why and being passionate about something. I love it how one of my friends says, find your why that makes you cry. Like, I wouldn't say my why makes me cry, but I'm living it for my 26 year in practice. Like I have never missed a day of work because I've been sick. I practice what I preach. Take my oregano oil. That's way up there with Triphala. It's probably my number one favorite thing to recommend in terms of viruses, parasites, bacteria. You want to get we all have low grades infection of some sort, infection and inflammation. I mean, there's always some type of bacteria, fungal thing. We all have yeast in our body. It's just a matter of when it goes too high levels, right? When you're going in from what's normal to like alert mode. So keeping your low grade infections way low, right? And inflammation, like monitoring inflammation. Also blood sugar, really key, especially in this age group, because very often our hormonal blueprint shifts. Like if we have too much cortisol in our body, that does affect our insulin. Very often higher cortisol levels correlate with higher insulin levels. So it's something really important to consider. The power of your thoughts, once again, like the regenerative possibilities of positive, passionate thoughts, OMG, like.
Which goes back to your why.
Right.
Just having something positive to focus on.
So those automatic negative thoughts, or we have coined them here at Santa Fe, so automatic, we call them, instead of automatic negative thoughts, turn those to acts, ants to act. So in this case, an ACT, automatic, you fill in the C. There's so many fabulous C words, automatic, courageous thoughts, automatic, connected thoughts, automatic, compelling thoughts, compassionate, catalytic, charismatic, changing thoughts, all of that. That is so regenerative. And I just want to also say the power of rituals. I talked about the power of rituals and how you start your day, how you end your day is regenerative. So the people that have rituals in their lives, I can honestly say they're going to live a much richer lifestyles and living by design, not by default.
Have you ever been through a bout of depression?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I have depressed days. I would just say I call them biorhythm days. I wouldn't say I've ever would say, you know what, that whole month I was depressed. It's not my makeup.
Or that year. Like some people just go through years.
Right. But you know what? I do have a bottle from Thorne Research called Deproloft that I sell to that we have available to our patients. And I really like it because it's a formula of a little bit of 5-HTP, a little bit of theanine, because a lot of people can't do 5-HTP or they can't do this or that. But this formula has been tested, and across the board, a lot of people who are depressed or anxious do really well with this. And I can't tell you how many type A women I've been able to work with acupuncture, with diet therapy. We have a lot of amazing health technology at Santa Fe Soul that helps with that neuroplasticity. So it helps to increase your theta waves. Because when you're in beta all the time, you're pretty much anxious and depressed. So I have days like Sunday. Oh my God. I felt like that was this past Sunday. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? And I felt kind of down. My son, my firstborn, just graduated from high school. So that was big. And I had my entire family here. And I'm like, whoa. So I do have days so I can relate to my patients that come in that are depressed. But there's so much in the natural world that I like to work with patients before they go on antidepressants because I think that messes with your neurochemistry.
Well, the reason I asked is that you just don't strike me as someone who would be depressed. And you seem like you've got, without realizing it, or maybe this wasn't your plan, but you have a plan not to be depressed.
I have a plan
not to go down that rabbit hole.
Right. And if I do find that I'm more moody, this is a pretty epic time for a woman, 52, right? You're feeling it too. So I got my first hot flashes. I'm like, I'm going to be the only woman on the planet that will be like excited to get a hot flash. Which was really my belief system. But then when I got them, I think must have been in April. I'm like, oh my God, they progressively get hotter, right? I'm like, whoa, okay. So I've got to figure something out. So I was already on 50 milligrams of bioidentical progesterone, but then I worked with some of my herbal products that I have 25 years of treating women that I'm like, through acupuncture and Chinese herbs, oh my goodness, it's amazing what you can do to calm down those hot flashes. And in many cases, I will work with bioidentical hormones as well. I'm a big fan of anything that mimics nature.
And are they natural or?
They are.
When you say bioidentical?
Bioidentical, so they're not synthetic. So whether it's coming from wild yam or it's natural. So it's like kind of that lock and key where it's like your body is not having to work its way to allow a synthetic thing in. Like, I don't really like the synthetic choices in terms of hormones for women. Mm-hmm. The study came out several years ago that it actually contributed to cancer and estrogen-related cancer. I just prefer that my patients use a bioidentical version, but low dose, because you don't want to block your body's ability to produce hormones. Mm-hmm. So, and there are women that just don't want to do that either, and they might have a genetic predisposition to any type of cancer, and they don't want to deal with that. I wouldn't say any type, but in terms of an estrogen-related cancer or cancers that are related to women, to whether it's breast or it's ovarian cancer or any other type of pelvic issue.
Mm. Right. Let's talk a moment about the hot flashes, because I started having them as well. So we're same age.
Yes.
Same things going on. And I've always had a belief. First, you can't imagine, if you've never had one, you cannot imagine what it's like. Somebody can tell you and you can empathize with them and say, oh, that's too bad. But until it happens to you, you go, holy hell, what is going on here? And now I get it. I'm doing everything that I can naturally to curb them. They're not completely gone, but I try to curb them, and I do everything from eliminating sugar, low to no alcohol. The Triphala, I believe, helps. Kava, anything that'll relax me, and high protein too, I think is also really helping me. Soy protein, so tofu and tempeh and large quantities of that. Still, they're there, the hot flashes. And it makes me wonder, because this is the first time I really felt like my body is out of my control. So my question to you, because now you're experiencing it too, and you're trying different methods, are there just things that are out of your control, or do you believe that it is just finding the right thing to control a certain circumstance, whether it is the hot flashes or whether it's something completely unrelated, whether it's a thyroid issue or whether it's some other ailment, whether it's a cold? Do you think that we have that much control over our bodies?
I think we do. I absolutely do. And it really simply comes down to food is like 80% of it. And I've talked a lot about your thoughts. That's really huge. But in terms of hot flashes, if you just stay away from all processed foods, that's going to help a lot. You might want to up your omega-3s. I don't think we get enough of the good fat is really important. But if you are just like, you have absolutely no progesterone in your body, and let me tell you, you don't want that. You don't want low progesterone to high estrogen. Estrogen dominance is a big cause of hot flashes too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us have that even at younger ages. So estrogen dominance, and then that's coming from breathing in air. It's from plastics and bottles and perfumes and cosmetics and all the crapola and shampoos. I mean, all of that can contribute to that. So also, again, this low-grade infection. Let me tell you, there's so many women I treat that they have gastrointestinal distress. I treat them for parasite, find out if they have parasites, or they have some yeast overgrowth, some bacteria overgrowth, SIBO. Infection is inflammation in the body, and that's going to affect hot flashes too. Geopathic stress. I mean, we are living in a world where we're spending 90% of our life indoors. There's scientific papers now on geopathic stress and how it's affecting our hormones, going crazy and keeping our blood sugars high. Like when you're being zapped 24/7, it's affecting
by Wi-Fi and other
right. It's causing your hormones to be so much less stabilized. Let's put it that way. Huge. And toxicity. It's everywhere now, right? We're swarming in a sea of toxins all the time, like 80,000 different known toxins right now. So we need to look at toxicity in our homes. And again, the cosmetics and what kind of detergents. It's so funny. I'll go into a family member's home or somebody I think that, I open the refrigerator. I'm like friggin' shocked. Like, oh my God, I'm thinking that they're eating healthy, right? Or they say they are. I'm like, I would just throw away 75% of everything that's in their refrigerator and in their pantry. So it's the self-care revolution. I mean, we need to bring into our households and everyone listening, right? Thinking that they're eating well and they're making good choices, but it's all of that. Yeah. Nobody can get away with it.
I'm laughing because I'm envisioning our refrigerator right now. There's an entire shelf that is super green food, and then it's spirulina and it's moringa and it's all of these superfoods, all these green containers on the top. And then the bottom shelf is watercress and bean sprouts and radish sprouts and lettuce. And
I want to come to your house. It sounds really
stuff.
good.
It's crazy. I open it and I'm like, Mom, there's nothing to eat. When I was a kid, you'd open up the pantry and say, there's nothing to eat. That's,
and I do believe in like 10% fun. Like my fun is tortilla chips, right? That's probably, what does it, every once in a while, I mean, I don't have much in terms of carbohydrates. I just know from my body, I don't even have to worry about my weight as long as I don't go. This is a time of cravings too, right? When your hormones are all crazy, you crave certain things. I don't even like to make myself crazy, like what I can't have. I look at what I can have. And it's also this age group, right? Self-awareness is everything. Like, do I want to go out and have 2 margaritas and feel like shit tomorrow morning?
Right.
No.
Right.
It's not about deprivations. It's about how do you want to feel when you wake up the next day? Because I can tell you one thing about me, Beth. I do not want to wait one day like feeling like crap is too much.
I know. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. There's too much. There's too many great things going on.
A human soul on fire, right? That passion. You want to like live full out.
Yeah. I totally agree with you.
Balance your hormones. Do whatever it takes to work with a natural practitioner, an acupuncturist, a naturopathic doctor, a functional medicine doctor. Work with somebody who can help you get on that right path.
Yep. No, you saw my lab results where I have no testosterone.
Yes,
I don't know
yes.
Is that the craziest thing?
Yeah, let me tell you, that's huge.
The thing is, when we were talking to Chris Talley, he was saying, you probably get out of bed in the morning and you're tired and you're lethargic. And no, I get up early in the morning and I bounce out of bed and I don't feel like I'm dragging. That's the thing. So that's the bizarre thing about it.
Well, I know that when, I'm 52, my testosterone levels are way better now than they were when I was training for marathons. I was over exercising, depleting my adrenals, depleting my HPA axis, my hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis was really messed up. And that affects when you think of your pregnenolone and that whole cascade of how your hormones work in your body. I was overdoing it. And I was aging rapidly. We can over exercise. So I'm really into shorter burst training, and people walk. I say, great, but you got to put some pedal to the metal.
Right. Because that will raise your testosterone too. That'll raise your level if you've got that high intensity activity going on. That gives it a burst.
Right. It does. And that's good for boosting your testosterone, and as is lifting weights. Like for me, doing a little bit of kettlebell. I will not go to a 50-minute class. That's what they are. I'm like, goodbye after 30 minutes because I know that I'm going into more, I don't want it to be catabolic where I'm breaking down tissue. I think we over exercise in this world. Overtrain, overdo. This is coming from an ex-marathon girl.
I know.
Yeah.
And, since I saw you, I did a quadzilla. I don't know if it was even on my radar it was not on my radar a year ago. It's 4 marathons in 4 days. So over Thanksgiving weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
You ran 26 miles each day?
Yeah. So 108 miles or whatever it is. And I was okay.
You're amazing at that. That exhausts me, the thought of it.
Yeah.
Even running 3 miles right now. I overdid it from the time I was 15 until about 47. So I don't even have the...
You ran for a long time.
Oh my God.
But you're keeping fit in other ways though. That's the important thing.
Yeah. And I think it's good that you can do it, but with low testosterone, you gotta, so this is something. So if you do have that lifestyle, fortunately you're doing the food piece, right? But getting those hormones in check.
I'll go back and get tested again in another month or so because that was just a few months ago.
But congratulations that you did that. You are a badass. You are a bold woman. I still have my bracelet from last year. Thank you very much. I love that. Yeah. That's something that I love, that idea about what it takes to be bold, right? It's such an internal thing.
It is.
That we bring out into the world. And, and it's a practice.
It is.
It's a practice.
It is a practice. And it's good to hear from people like you who are doing bold things. And,
oh my gosh.
On the cutting edge.
Yes.
And leading the way in many things.
Yes.
And the guests that you'll have on your future podcast too.
Right.
I'm sure will be amazing and inspirational.
Can I talk a little bit about addiction?
Yes, please. I was just going to go to that.
Okay, good.
Because before you talked about regenerative medicine and you started to talk about neuroplasticity, which I think is a really important topic because there's been a lot of information about it coming out. Whereas before we thought the brain was a lot more fixed. And now we're discovering that there is a lot of ability to change.
Right.
And you're doing a lot of work in terms of that, in terms of addiction.
A ton. Because most people have some addiction in their life, one or another. And some people are more...
Tortilla chips.
Tortilla chips, yes. And running was an addiction for me. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. But whether it's, the people I see who have to have their 2 glasses of wine every night, it's a pattern, right? Or it's watching TV, or it's shopping online, or it's spending time on social media. I mean, most everybody can identify some addictive pattern. And especially this age group, right? Our brain needs to be exercised. Like when we think about all that's out there, whether it's doing Sudoku puzzles or it's listening, goodness gracious, there's so much that you can buy in terms of activating more of your alpha, theta, and delta waves. That's a good way to increase this neuroplasticity.
Because we're normally in beta.
Is that too right? Much beta, okay. Especially we women, we go, right? And we don't get our young, we're still moving, doing, and not getting enough digestion rest. So that's really essential. So in terms of the brain and addiction, it's like that repetitive motion. That's the amygdala, right? That's the area that stress response that comes from that familiarity of that stress response. We want to be able to turn that down. So one of the best ways is to augment, to increase, to amplify more theta. So in our body optimization and brain regeneration room, we have what's called the theta chamber. So obviously it's a chamber that you get into for 20 or 30 minutes, and it has cranial electrostimulation built into it. Also vestibular motion, so there's movement, and we have PMF, pulse electromagnetic field technology, and then we have binaural beats, and we also have light therapy. So all this is happening at one time. So a lot of times people will have epiphanies in just that 30-minute time. We'll have a creative genius idea, just one 30-minute session. But it's really like any change. It's not one time. It's doing something on a regular basis, like every single day. That's where we help to change the brain, like a 21-day program or a 28-day program with some alcoholics that we've worked with recently, or people with an opiate addiction.
So people will come here right. almost like an outpatient program.
Exactly.
So they'll come in, they'll have their therapy. It will be for an extended period of time, like you said, maybe 28 days or 21 days.
Right.
And they come in and you're literally able to kind of change their thinking patterns.
Right. Exactly. Change the thinking patterns, change the way that their brain is processing information. So we're shutting down an overactive system, part of the brain, and activating a more uncommonly used part of the brain. So it's like when the unfamiliar becomes familiar. Mm-hmm. The unfamiliar becomes familiar. So
because it becomes a habit.
Right.
It's just like you said, it's literally changing their brain and it becomes that habit.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's a minor miracle.
It is a miracle.
Do you track these addicts beyond the time that they're coming here?
Yeah, we do like to keep in touch with people that have been part of our programs to see how they're sustaining the change. And we do give them something called the Theta STEM, which has different programs in it for, let's say, sleep.
STEM or STEM stimulation?
A Theta STEM. So it has 32 different programs in it. So one might be for maybe for sleep. One might be for euphoria because you want to increase your good moods.
Is this like an app or something? Or
it's something that you clip on the ears. It's cranial electrostimulation. So let's say you have alcohol addiction, there's a program for that. If you want more clarity, you want more focus, there's a program for that.
Is this a device you have?
It's like a $500 device that people can get from us. Yeah.
Huh. I use an e-stim in my knees.
Right.
So it's with the pads. I put 4 pads on and I turn it on,
so
different
that's
vibrations.
For local inflammation. That's another form of energy medicine. And in this case, it's working more on the brain.
Right.
Right. So it's a lot of, when it comes to addictions, we want to change the brain. Mm-hmm. Right. And then also, again,
you probably don't want to do that without a doctor's help, would you say? Or is that something that you can buy off the shelf and kind of figure it out?
Well, we do guide our patients on use of this and how to use it. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking about listeners.
Right.
Are they going to go order it on Amazon?
Might want to, I'd say there's a lot you can buy on Amazon that a lot of people it's best to have a coach of some sort to really walk you through it so you're using it optimally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a lot of incredible phone apps and stuff like that. But addiction to work, it's addiction to sex. I mean, there's so many out there, but a lot of it's just coming back to yourself, right? Like coming back to your true north. I mean, this is where meditation and a mindfulness practice is so essential. Just to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes twice a day, just really tuning in to you. So you are upgrading your own and connected to your own operating system, not someone else's. Mm-hmm. But even with this 21-day program, the efficacy of it has to do with a self-care lifestyle. So we advocate a healthy diet, certainly. Again, if you have a really miserable gut that's messed up and you've got parasites all over, I can't even tell you. We really want to address that too, because you want to heal the gut. That's a lot of our neurochemistry comes in terms of our production of serotonin and dopamine and GABA and the endorphins and norepinephrine. All comes from a healthy gut.
That sounds so. I've heard that enough to believe it, but I think for someone hearing that for the first time, it sounds crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Those mighty mitochondria in your body and the soup of the good bacteria is so essential. But if you have like this major giardia going on or blastocystis hominis that you can get at a salad bar, I mean, these are protozoans and crapola that are eating away at your system and affecting the way that you absorb the good nutrients. So it's key.
And then you just think about all that we're putting on top of that. Like you said, the processed foods and that sort of thing are not helping it.
Right. And for people, a lot of people that are craving sugar, almost always there's some little critter. You know, there's a big part. So many people just think, oh, I'm depressed or I'm this or that. I'm like, you've got a real deficiency going on or an overactive production of critters in your body. So it's a deficiency or an excess of something.
Yeah.
So many people, there's so many people that are just depressed too because of their gut ecology. They're not producing enough serotonin.
Is there something I want to talk about in terms of depression? Because you had mentioned previously that something like a third of people are depressed. And do you think, and I don't know if it's the type of person that you see in your practice here, but it seems to me that in our cultural environment, what's going on in the United States right now, there are more people who are majorly depressed. They're losing hope. I've heard people wanting to kill themselves because they're paying attention to the news cycle. Do you find that yourself? Do you see an increase in that or get a sense of what is going on?
Absolutely. And it's soon to be one of the top 10 causes of death. And the sad part is it's among younger populations too.
Do you think they're being affected by the same thing, or do you think it's just a natural course of us being unhealthy? Or do you think in 3 years there might be hope and we'll turn that around?
I think it's just going to get worse. I hate to say it. I do, because of the babies being born now are being born in this toxicity and all this electromagnetic pollution. I mean, it's devastating what it does to our body when we're in it 24/7. And the food sources have declined. The consciousness around being healthy is huge. And then all the social media that our children are being exposed to and the cyberbullying and the gaming. Talk about neuroplasticity. It's like it's creating these one-way pathway for these boys and girls, and that becomes their thought process.
Through video games.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Yes. For all of the women and people listening, there's a great book called Glow Children or Glow Child. Yes. Written by a doctor in Long Island, and it really addresses especially the social media issues in girls primarily and the gaming in boys and how it's impacting them in terms of it's so addictive that it can take up 3 or 4 hours. And I know the times that my kids are playing games that you can barely have a conversation with them. It might be a soccer game. I don't even know what that's called, but my son will play that for hours, and he's on with like 2 or 3 other guy friends, right? Everybody's in their own homes, and it's like, hey, Harrison, time for dinner. Hey, listen, you need to study. It's like you can't even earth to them. They're impenetrable. these are my concerns, and they're real concerns. And I don't know a parent that is not concerned and is not experiencing this at home.
Where's the hope? I don't want to leave on a negative note. So what's the hope? What can we do as individuals to turn things around?
So the hope is to really put yourself first and to choose a self-care lifestyle and never lose sight of your big dream and your big why. To me, no matter what, that will certainly keep me away. Like my kids want to teach me this one game that's new, hot, and I should know the name of it. I'm like, no.
Video game.
It's something hot that is supposedly not as, it's still a gun, it's still, but he's like, oh, but this is not supposed to be as negative as some of the other ones out there. Just stay true to yourself. We were all brought onto this planet to do good, to be of service in some way. Do good, do not do harm to your body. And, but you got to love yourself and honor yourself. That's why I'm hosting women's retreats. There'll be another one offered here in the fall that I want to bring women into. Like, if you're lost, we don't all know what our purpose is or our passion, but I love to help people kind of align with their true north.
Do you have information on your website about the retreat?
Yes. And Robyn Benson, ROBYN Benson.com. And for all of you listening, if you've heard about my regenerative medicine, just something very simple, RobynBenson.com/gift, you can learn about regenerative medicine and my most important pathways to youthful aging. Until living full out in this wonderful life.
Good. Well, I'll link to that in the show notes. I'll find the retreat. I'll have to look at my September because it sounds like a great retreat to join.
I'd love for you to be here.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Anything else you want to add to that?
What else? I just want to say, getting back to one of the most important things I think I've shared is the importance of choosing a morning ritual. Start your day before you get out of bed, just stretch and connect. Like connect to your heart, connect to your why, just connect to your body, give yourself a hug and stretch. And then the T is about self-talk. Instead of thinking about your to-do list or, oh my God, your doom list, like you're worried about, there's some things, a lot of things big things are going on in our lives. You might have an aging parent or you've got concerns about your teenage daughter. So just self-talk, just say 3 things. It might be 3 mantras that you say to yourself every single day. So self-talk. A has to do with 3 action steps, like just 3 things that you want to accomplish. So you go to bed feeling good about them. It could be a simple, like, I want to call my mother. It could be, I want to buy this book on Amazon, whatever, but just 3 action steps and have that near your bed. So you're connected with that. So you write it down, make it happen. And then R, find some time for rest and relaxation. It could be just deep breathing for 3 minutes. It could be just turning on a meditation app. But somewhere once or twice a day where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just reconnecting to myself. And T is about touch. And I think that when we think about endorphins and oxytocin, that's a feel-good hormone that's so important to keep those levels high in our lives. Doing something nice and unexpected just for someone else. Who do you want to touch in every given day? That's my start. And on that really good note.
I love that. That is. And start with the chocolate and the START program.
And the START program. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Good. Robyn, thanks again for having me here at your
It's so good
place.
To have you back.
Yeah, I'll be back next year, I'm sure.
Love what you're doing in the world.
Well, I can't wait to hear your podcast,
Well,
too.
thank you very much.
Really excited for you.
Thank you.
So good luck with that.
Thank you.
As I mentioned in the intro, Robyn was kind enough to spend a little time with me, and she gave me a prolozone shot in my ankle. And I actually received another one from her about 6 days later before I left Santa Fe. And I won't go into the details right now, but I will say that my foot is feeling better. She said it would take likely about 7 to 10 days to feel the full effect of these shots. So what I will do is I'll report back in the coming weeks and let you know how things went with that. So if you find yourself in Santa Fe and you want to try some interesting treatments for whatever ails you, stop by Santa Fe Soul with Dr. Robyn Benson. Thanks again for joining me today. Don't forget to check out my tours at wandertours.com. I just wrapped up both our Seattle and Santa Fe culinary tours, but in August, I'll be headed to Papua New Guinea in case that floats your boat. And you can come with me on that trip, or you could join our North India tour this fall or South India in February. And if you're feeling adventurous, join me on Mount Kilimanjaro or on a Tanzania safari early next year. Those tours are January, February in Tanzania. We're finalizing hotels on that particular trip, so you'll want to jump on board quickly if you're interested. If you'd like to connect with me, you can friend me on Facebook, and I am WanderGal on Instagram. You can find out more about me by visiting wanderlustandlipstick.com. You can sign up for my newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site, and you'll receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. Ladies, please join us on our Be Bold Facebook group. We've got nearly 2,600 members in that group. It's a community of amazing women who are sharing their wins, sometimes their struggles. Bottom line, we learn from each other. We share some great information and encouragement. It's just a great community, a great tribe there. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.